So I will be talking about sections 4.1, C.1, and C.2 as they all kind of cover relatively the same content or have a lot of overlap. So to start us off, we have species. Now species are groups of organisms that can produce offspring. They may also be reproductively isolated in separate populations. Um, Furthermore, species typically occupy roles in their habitats, and these are what we call niches. Now, there are two different types of niches. There's the fundamental niche, and this is the broadest possible niche. This is the one that every species is kind of born with. It's that fundamental one that's embedded in their brains. Now, there's also the realized niche, which is the second one, and this is the actual niche. Now, this is the one that every organism settles into. It can also occur when two different species are competing for the same resources, and one species either has to vacate the habitat or change to a new niche. And this is because species that have identical niches cannot survive in the same habitat. Keystone species have niches that determine the existence of the entire ecosystem. Say, for example, the wolves in Yellowstone. So they were a keystone species in the sense that all they did was hunt, and their niche was just to eat and survive. And so they were able to regulate everything else, every other species in the Yellowstone Park, because before that, without them, there was no really keystone species in that environment, and so everything kind of went rampant, and there was nothing to regulate. Um, yeah, which leads me to our next part. When there's a lot of species together and they're interacting, this is what we call a community. Now, communities can be classified in different relationships within these communities. One such example is mutualism. Now, mutualism is when both organisms benefit. So that means like both organisms get something out of the exchange. There's commensalism, which means that one benefits and the other is not disturbed, is not affected at all. And then there's parasitism, which means that one benefits and the other is harmed. The opposite of mutualism, pretty much. But yeah, so this is like mosquitoes and humans is a good example of parasitism, because the mosquitoes get blood and the humans just get like a nasty mosquito bite or could get infected. Either way, they're negatively affected. Now, when communities interact with the habitats around them, we get what's called an ecosystem. Now, in order for ecosystems to be stable, there needs to be predictable climates. This is so that the species and communities within these ecosystems aren't shocked all the time, and they can adapt and eventually learn to live in these ecosystems, because if the ecosystem was constantly changing or the climate was constantly changing, then species would die off because they couldn't adapt in time. So in communities, it's just basically, in order to have a stable ecosystem, there needs to be predictable climates. Now, human interference can change this and affect the nutrient cycling. This can include deforestation. Now, deforestation is also an example of ecological succession, or can lead to ecological succession. Primarily, like I said, ecological succession um, is basically when life kind of starts to sprout in a new area, or area that didn't previously have like or didn't have anything living at the time. There's two different types. There's primary, which occurs in environments that had no previous life at all whatsoever. Now this can be from like say volcanic activity, for example. There's like nothing in the area, nothing was growing, there were no flowers or plants or anything like that before. This can lead to primary ecological succession. Now there's also secondary ecological succession, which occurs in environments that had previous life. So say like humans came and then they brought their deforestation and took out all the trees, meaning there was nothing left to live there. But some seas blew over and other stuff growing. But because there was life previously living there before, it is secondary ecological succession. Another example of this is like a wildfire, which like burns away the surrounding area, yet life can still grow back, but because there was previous life before that, it is an example of ecological succession. So that's basically the gist of 4.1, C.1, and C.2.